Hey everyone, and welcome to What's Your Call Wednesday. Today we're going to talk about the ever important topic of foul selection. Now, it's not always clear cut, it's not always easy in terms of recognizing what is and what isn't a foul. So, between today and Friday, I want to talk about this topic alone. Today, we're going to talk about sort of the overall philosophy of foul selection and where it helps, where it hinders. And then on Friday, we'll get into more the detail and the minutia of what contact is or isn't, and sort of the telltale signs and what to look for and what not to look for. And that way, you guys can start to have a better understanding of where foul selection happens, and when we're looking at games and when we're evaluating ourselves or when we're watching professional referees, we're understanding what they're doing and why. So first is first. The context of the game is going to be critical to understand what fouls will get called, how tight the game will be versus how loose the game will be, based on skill level, age level, the temperature, the environment, other contextual clues about these two teams. If it's a rivalry or something like that, all of these things are going to play into how much you're going to let the game breathe, or how tight you're going to maintain your control, right? The overall kind of in-game context, right? The football context, the football understanding, right? We start to understand where, fouls are occurring, whether they're at the midfield, whether they're in the attacking third or the defensive third, right? You have what the score is. You have the the situation of, is an attack developing? Is it a revenge tackle? Is there something else going on, right? So all of this plays into the context of what we're going to kind of discuss here in terms of the overall context of the match. Now, there's a difference between physical contact and a foul. And for this piece, I want to show one clip that I found today that I think embodies this a little bit better and nicer, between what is physical contact and then what is just on the edge of foul or just over the edge of foul, right? So let's have a look at it here real quick so that you guys can kind of evaluate for yourselves here and we can kind of have a look. All right, so this first one is going to be body on body. He is maybe on the edge of a foul, maybe just below it, right? Where he's making contact, the arm is not out. It's just when contact is made, they're within that area of the ball, and then no one falls over. It's easy to let this one go. It's easy to say we're just going to call this trifling contact, right? Especially for this age and for this level. Now, for me, this next one, now we see white. I think that's white. Looks white to me. The lighter color jersey, how about we go with that? The lighter color jersey is now going to step in and across where the darker color of the black jersey is now coming through. And you'll see he kind of comes through and he's got that elbow driving through and out. And there's more force, there's more oomph to it, right? And that elbow's coming out. There's a little bit extra into this where now we're looking at a push. It is kind of into the side slash back area. The location of the foul isn't necessarily as much of a concern for me as much as, sort of that coming together, that force that happens here. But all of it together, I think we have one set that is just below that foul, and then we have one set that's just above that foul. Now, context to this game, right? We see what happens in the context immediately after, where 19 and 5 are going at this game, and they're playing their hearts out here. But we are, we see that little push, and now we get a little bit of bonus misconduct here on 5. That's absolutely simulation, but we don't necessarily always need to go into that, right? But for the foul selection here, some will say that first one is a foul. Others will say the second one's a foul. Some will say neither of them's a foul. And for me, this is where that line sits. Where is it a trifling contact versus where is it that push with the arm, etc. And then again, you have your body language. You obviously 19's taken offense to that, so there's sort of a bigger reaction to this than maybe is necessary. But you have sort of how players are involved, right? That first contact, 5 keeps on going, keeps coming through, and then 5 ultimately comes back through and ends up fouling, that original player. The context matters. Now, the actual contact matters too, because we see here shoulders down. It's shoulders down. That arm actually doesn't even. He does a very good job of not even moving the arm, right? So he doesn't deliver that extra bit of force the same way. And then that's where 5 accelerates through, throws that into his back and side with a lot more force, and he's throwing that elbow a little bit more. So again, I think the referee has this correct in this situation where that first one is more body on body, trifling contact. We keep going. Both players stay in the play, and we're good. This next one, though, is going to definitely be a little bit more above the line of foul, right? And we have that ability to have that tolerance based on what Law 5 gives us, right? We determine what an offense is and what isn't, right? And there's always going to be that little bit of a range between them. And that's where you have the ability to call it a little bit tighter. And then you also have that ability to let the game breathe based on the context and the needs and, just the general physicality of the game, right? So I thought this was a really good sequence. I'd love to know what you guys think on this one, because I think it matters when we start to talk about foul selection and what is a foul, what isn't a foul. In some cases, that first contact in a lower level game with the younger players, that might be a foul. That's okay. You can call it that tightly, and that's all right. Whereas in higher levels, we let that first one go, but then that second one starts to become a bigger kind of piece of the puzzle. Okay, so let me know what you guys think on this little clip right here, because I thought it was really interesting. And then we can talk about the simulation and such too, how you would end up handling that. But that's more of a separate conversation in terms of the misconduct and so forth, right? So I think as I was talking about the range is important because it's going to give us the opportunity to be fair, right? For us to apply our football understanding, our game understanding, and to let that kind of to let the game breathe and to let there be some physicality, but at the same time not let it go completely and totally overboard either. So that when you do look at these kinds of things, you have a different sense of what's fair to let go and then what's not. And sometimes that line can be razor thin, which is why having that range is much easier to be able to pull things back and tighten things up, as opposed to only ever being kind of straight line consistent. We don't want to be robotic, but we do want to kind of stay within that range and be consistent. And that's where I think it's the process by which you evaluate how that contact is made, and it's the process by which you judge the physicality, the force, the contact, all this stuff. It all plays into how that happens, right? Ultimately, your foul selection is going to either help you or hurt you in how you're controlling the game. It's either going to enhance your control, where you're able to control the tempo, and you're able to kind of use these really selective fouls to control the tempo of the game. And again, within that range that we're talking about, that range of physicality, that range of contact, and again, that's all based on the context. Okay, we're always coming back to that context piece, right? Where it's going to let you kind of control the flow of the game, control the tempo of the game, so that when you need to slow things down, you can call a little tighter, and when you need to let things play, you have that wiggle room to let that play just as much. Obviously, with all of this, with foul selection, it also helps to keep the lid on the game, to prevent escalation and to allow you to choose the right moments so that, it kind of takes the wind out of the sails in those moments when things might just be edging up just a bit too much, and then it kind of threatens our ability to control the match, right? Just it's critical to think of your whistle, right? Because if you're hearing it too much, you're probably calling it a little too tight. If you're hearing it not enough, you're probably letting it be a little too loose. Give or take, every game is going to be different, but just as a rule of thumb, your whistle is the tool, and it will remind you as to how often you're on it, as to how that game is flowing, and so forth, right? So for me, from a high level, there's three really critical habits that I do when I'm starting to think about foul selection and so forth. One, I am always watching games, and I'm not watching them for the teams. These days, I watch the game more for the referees. I watched the Inter Barcelona game to watch Simon Marciniak. I watched the Europa League final to watch Felix Zweier today. There's so many different styles. There's so many different things, right? And Marciniak was much. He has a much firmer style, but still lets the game breathe. Whereas Zweier is a little bit more passive, in my opinion, in terms of how he makes decisions and lets things go. That game was really open. There was two or three I thought that could have been easily called fouls that he waved to let play go, and he was fair. He went to both sides. It was fine, right? It really let the game stay open and stay, a fluid attacking game, right? So that's one thing that I always do. Watch a professional game and watch how a professional referee does things. Take what they do. Learn. Listen to how they're blowing the whistle. Listen to how they're intervening into the game. When they choose to stop. When they don't choose to stop. And kind of get a feel for the context of the game as best you can. Secondly, everybody has these VAO cameras or match cameras and so forth. Ask coaches for the footage. Because when you start watching footage of yourself doing games, it's going to reveal a ton of information to you for your own performances, and it's going to give you the opportunity so that you can learn and reflect on key things. What I like to do, especially when I know that I can get the footage, I'll like to, if there's a foul or something that I know I'm going to kind of want to go back to, I look at my watch, I record the time, and I write KMI, and it may not even be a KMI, but I'll write down the minute of the game that I want to look for in order to be able to go through and see that. Same thing with like if you use Ref 6 or if you record a yellow card or something like that and you get the time there, you're able to go back and you have those milestones to be able to go back through on the footage and look at it and be in a much better scenario to learn from your own performance. And finally, in your post-match or at halftime or your post-match, get feedback. What am I doing well? What am I not doing well? And you can narrow it down. Like, hey guys, I'm working on foul selection today. Let me know. I'm trying to keep control of the match, but letting it, not calling it too tight. Let me know what you guys think, And you can even give that kind of instruction ahead of time and say, this is what I'm doing, right? It's not necessarily something that you need to tell the teams or anything like that, but this is something that I'm doing. This is what I want to look at, and kind of go forward from there. So those three things: watch your professional referees, get your footage if you can, so that you can learn, and finally get feedback from your peers. Those three things will prove to be invaluable in order for you to kind of move forward and continue to learn where foul selection can start to let the overall game come into its own and come to life. So to kind of bring it all back, right? We have the context of the game. You have how it affects your control, and then sort of those things that we can start to apply, right? Apply from the context forward. Our game understanding, what kind of play it was, where the contact was on the field, the timing, the sort of the heat of the match, etc. All of these things are going to start mattering for you. So, in the comments, drop what you think about that sequence that I shared in this clip, what you guys think of that foul, and then just overall, how do you guys prepare for a match in terms of foul selection, in terms of judging, if you have, say, a 10-year-old match versus a 19-year-old match, and kind of everything in between, right? And let me know, most importantly, what other questions, because I know this is more the high level kind of scenario here, but I can prepare in the next couple days to dig into some specific sequences that you guys have in order to kind of illustrate, like a slide tackle, a poke tackle, shoulder charge. Obviously, you guys have seen enough slide tackles and sanctionable, reckless versus excessive force and so forth. I've covered those a lot on here, but if there's any questions around what specifically you want me to look at and review, I'd love to put together a series of clips to be able to go ahead and do that. So in the comments, drop me a line on what you guys think in terms of what questions you have specifically around what contact is fair, what contact is foul, and I'll be able to put some stuff together over the next day or so and figure that out for you. Okay? So in the meantime, let me know what you guys think about this, and let me know your comments, and I will see you guys for your Infringement Friday. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.